Back live tonight, here in Focus. Thanks for staying on. Let's now go back to one of our leading stories tonight on the multi-party charter agreement by 7 political parties. After 2-day talks, the opposition is convinced there's great potential to topple the ANC. But for more on this, let's speak now to ActionSA's chairperson, Michael Beaumont. Michael, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on. As you were coming into this, or this back and forth around whether or not the DA is going to sign an agreement that they will not be involved with the ANC. In one interview, I think Solim Simang saying, but we are the ones who came up with this concept. We initiated it. It's rather strange that they are bringing this question. How does this even come about? I mean, is the trust issue sort of settled now at this particular point?
No, I think it's a work in progress, Thabo. I think when you negotiate a pre-election agreement like this, you would like trust to have been, developed between parties. I think we've had to start the process of building trust along the way. We've been working on this project for 3 months now, and a very considerable investment into the program. And I think trust is starting to be built. And certainly when you look at how political parties have put aside differences and have put South Africans first in the negotiations that culminated this evening, it certainly looks like a very strong foundation on which we can continue to build trust going forward.
Yeah. When you look at the numbers, and it's just, you tell me what your thoughts are. If you look at the numbers currently with the 7 political parties that are there, right, even if we were to be generous and say the ANC would drop to 49%. The numbers that you have, the DA at 84%, IFP at 6.3%. If we look at your number during the local government election, 1.8%, let's say you do better, maybe you get another 2%. You would still not be able to unseat the ANC.
Yeah, I'm not sure the numbers you're relying on, but I think the point to make is that ActionSA contested only 6 municipalities out of 278 in 2021. We will contest every one of those municipalities in the 9 provinces next year. Right. We came 6th in the country with 2.36%. And I think from that point of view, we've got a very big contribution to make to a global project of a majority. I think the work of the IFP and KZN is well documented in terms of their growth path. But I think at the same time, Thabo, political parties are saying the work is not done. The work actually only starts now.
Right.
We've taken a very aggressive approach to see how we're going to embark upon bringing more political parties into this agreement. We're going to take a very aggressive approach to the voter registration campaign with the weekends coming up in November. And we certainly are going to be taking an approach with civil society because major political change requires social partners. And we believe this strategy combined is going to activate 27 million South Africans who stop voting. And that's the number that's going to turn South Africa around above all else.
No, that's where I was coming in. Interesting that you raised KZN, and because I was going to say, unless your intention at this particular point is going to be looking at provincial, because certainly if you look at Gauteng, for example, those numbers tend to be a little bit different, and there is a more convincing chance via this coalition for you to be able to get that majority in the Gauteng province. And with a little bit of hard work, I suppose KwaZulu-Natal can also present that similar kind of picture. Because in Gauteng, you're looking at an ANC that's sitting at about 36%. In KwaZulu-Natal, an ANC that's sitting at about 40%, which is something that could be workable. Is that something that you have in mind, that if maybe you shoot at national and you don't get there, you might be able to win particular provinces?
Well, I think without any question, those 2 provinces are certainly most within reach, and there was extensive conversation around that. The elections next year are not just national in nature, they are provincial as well. And I think for what it's worth, there's also discussions to be had about the Northwest and the Northern Cape, where I think the ANC falling below 50% is a fait accompli. But I think, Thabo, we are too quick to assume that the ANC will not fall far below 50 at the national level of the election next year. I think it is most certainly the case that their decline is no longer linear and is starting to become exponential. But I think more than anything else, Thabo, we've got to understand that there are 13 million unregistered voters in South Africa of voting age and 14 million who've just stopped voting. It is the political party or group of political parties that activate those 27 million people. And what I'm suggesting to you is that those people understand that the ANC is losing a majority. They've never seen any coherence on the other side of the aisle. That is what this group of parties is going to change going forward, and that's what we think is going to get them out of bed on election day.
The Clause 7, I think it is, of the agreement, Declaration of Intent, 7.1.2, do you think that will stand in the way, in a sense, for example, of getting other parties that have clearly shown their support? If you have a look at the 10th anniversary celebration of the EFF, parties like UDM, parties like ATM, from coming on board this coalition? Or are you relying on the fact that maybe it could be amended at a later stage?
Well, certainly, while it is the case that we can consider amendments to this agreement, I would suggest to you that that particular section, which for the benefit of the viewers is a declaration that political parties will not form agreements that ultimately support the continuation of ANC governance or the initiation of EFF governance. We don't regard that as something that we should be concerned about. We think that should be something that should be celebrated. We don't think that South Africa is going to be changed in partnership with the political party from which we need change as it relates to the ANC. And if political parties like the UDM and the ATM would like to attach their flag to the mast of ANC governance, they must do so. But I would suggest to you, Tawo, and to the South African people, that they will be severely punished in the upcoming elections for that decision, because we can see very clearly that 85% of South Africans believe the country is moving in the wrong direction. For a political party to want to associate with a continuation of that wrong direction, or even worse, an acceleration of that wrong direction, would be, in our opinion, self-injurious, and that is why I think political parties like the ATM and the UDM, etc., have to make a decision where they go in the future.
Yeah. I'm not attaching them more to the ANC more than I am attaching them to the EFF, which is another party that you have cited as in that clause as a part of your common principle as the 7 parties not to work with that organization.
Yeah, and I think let's be clear. We have asked that this agreement is not framed in terms of being anti any political party. We want this agreement, and we have framed this agreement in terms of a positive alternative vision for South Africa. But I think we also need to be real, Thabo, that on the other side of an election will need to be a stable and coherent government. And I think ideologically it is safe to say that we cannot produce such a government in partnership with the EFF. National government requires ideological coherence on the question of how you're going to grow an economy, how you're going to position South Africa on the international stage, and how are we going to ensure that we can build a non-racial South Africa in which all South Africans find a home. And in real terms, the EFF cannot be a stable or reliable partner in any of those 3 dimensions.
Yeah. Let's talk about 8.1.6. There are no requirements that the leader of the largest party is de facto to be nominated for a position of president. Is that not going to lead to a situation of what we saw play out in Ekurhuleni and in the city of Johannesburg by and large, where you all rock up on the day and you all have your own nomination on who's going to be president, and the whole thing falls apart right there?
No, and I think South Africans can take comfort in the idea that the local government experience is not going to be imported into the running of national government. I don't think anyone wants to see that, and I think a lot of lessons have been learned. What it really is saying is that South Africa doesn't have a presidential system. Voters do not vote for a president, they vote for political parties. And while the proportionality of political parties certainly must be considered, it is not going to be definitive that a largest party de facto has an automatic claim to the candidate for president. And that actually one of the most important parts of this agreement is that a conversation is had about the merit of different candidates. So that when we are considering the suitability of a political leader from the different parties in this coalition, we should be considering the suitability of who will do the best job in that particular role. And I think that is a huge step forward from the territorial style of coalitions that we have seen to date.
So what's going to inform that suitability? Are you going to come up with a criteria? You must have a matric, you must have a PhD. How are you going to come up with a criteria for that?
I think, to be honest, there's a lot more discussion to be had in that regard. I think the political parties recognize that right now the job of this multi-party group is to have each political party individually led by a leader who is on good talking terms with one another, but for the sake of this point, is leading their own political party towards the best possible election result, because that is what is going to drive the broader multi-party project going forward. I don't think there was any definitive conclusion as to how we would come to a view which presidential candidate we would get to. I think we have a long road before we can go there and many issues to consider until we do.
Yeah. Of course, the one that, why were you so clear about the largest party in the coalition holding the position of leader of government business? Why was that an easier agreement to reach?
I think one of the important principles that we did agree to here was the idea of general proportionality matters in a coalition. We don't like what we see in places like Johannesburg, where political parties that have no discernible constituency are running the executive and the legislature of South Africa's biggest metro. And I think from that point of view, it has to be recognized that if the largest party is not going to have a de facto claim to the position of presidency, there has to be consideration around another important role that ensures that their voice has a prominent role in government. And I think it was felt that leader of government business is an important role. It's a vital interface between the executive and the legislative functions of our parliament, and that ultimately it was important for that proportionality to find expression through that particular provision.
Yeah. And maybe one final one. How different is the system of monitoring and evaluation that you are proposing you will develop and put in place compared to the ones that are currently in place?
Well, I would hope very different, because if you look at the system of monitoring and evaluation in South Africa, in the current national government, it's certainly not a system that is being used to great effect. And certainly where it is being used to great effect, it's not being used to promote civil servants who are delivering and to address those who are not. But from our point of view, what we are saying is that as a new incoming government in 2024, it is vital to have a dialogue with the South African people to say, these are the priorities, this is what we believe success looks like, to establish a scoreboard going forward so we can quantify progress towards that success in an objective manner, and that there can be an ongoing discussion with the South African people as to the level of progress and performance taking place against that priority. I think we've had a government that has locked South Africans out of any discernible conversation about the direction of this country and the performance against the direction, and the framework of monitoring and evaluation that we are proposing will be to change that situation.
Michael Beaumont, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for coming on and your intervention tonight. That's ActionSA chairperson Michael Beaumont there. Your thoughts, will the agreement stick? You can let us know. Your views, 072-110-5584, or otherwise tweet us at Newzroom 405.